Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to be demonstrating how to forge a heavy-duty set of tweezers. As you already know, the tweezers you can find in a drugstore, they're barely 2 inches long and they're far too flimsy to do any kind of work. I'm not sure what they're for, but they're certainly not designed to take a metal shaving out of a calloused hand. So we're going to solve that problem today. We're going to design a pair of tweezers that's large enough to fit into a man's hand and sturdy enough to pick up a small dog. I'm going to be forging these tweezers out of one piece. This bar is approximately 9 inches long, which is twice the width of my anvil plus an inch. This bar happens to be 3/8 of an inch in diameter, and I've straightened it out of a coil spring, but you can pretty much forge it out of any type of spring steel. In this heat, I'm using the anvil to measure the first offset that I need for this blank. I'm going to be forging both halves of the tweezers on each end of the bar, leaving the full diameter of the bar right in the middle. The offset determines the amount of material that I have to work with, and then I'll use the next few heats to just rough in the shape of the blank. I'm not trying to create a finished forging here, I just want to make sure that I have enough material to work with at the bench. This type of forging is usually called whitesmithing because the finishing process removes all the scale and leaves a very refined finish. So even though I'm not working on a finished forging, I still need to hammer very carefully so I don't create problems for myself during the finishing process. I'll forge the other half of the bar the same way, and when I'm satisfied that both halves are fairly close, I'll be ready to bend the blank in half. The bend has to be done very carefully. I'm trying to accomplish two things here. I need to bend the arms around without creating a thin spot where the arms intersect with the 1-inch bar section, and I'm also trying to keep that bar section as straight as possible. So in the next couple of heats, I'm just going to concentrate on bending those arms around that 1-inch bar. I'll be working back and forth between the anvil and the bic iron to try to sharpen that corner without bending that 1-inch bar. Once the arms are out of the way, I can start upsetting that 1-inch bar into the end detail that I want on these tweezers. I'm going to all this trouble because I want to make sure that that flared detail on the end of the pair of tweezers is being forged out of a solid bar. If I simply bent the blank in half, I'd be creating a thin spot in the spring that would fail at some point when I'm using the tweezers. Anytime you make a very sharp bend in a spring, you need to compensate for the natural thinning that occurs when you make that bend. Otherwise, the spring is going to fail. Next, I'll take a quick heat so that I can open up the tweezers and start filing the inside of the arms flat. I need to file these arms flat now because once I close the tweezers, I'll have no way of reaching inside. Now that the inside edges are finished, I can forge both halves of the tweezers so that they fit perfectly together. Once this is done, I'm going to start all the rough grinding that I need to do to shape the tweezers. By keeping the tweezers as a solid block, it's really easy to make the whole thing symmetrical. You just have to keep an eye on the center line to make sure that you're not grinding more off of one edge than the other. Once I'm happy with the overall shape, I'll take a final heat to curve the legs of the tweezers, and then I'll carefully file each leg to get the spring tension that I want. So here are the finished tweezers after about an hour of grinding and filing. They've been tempered to a full blue, and I don't usually over polish these things. I like the flat finish that you get from careful draw filing. We'll see you next time.